Hello everyone, it's Dorie with Forever Quilting. I am at the shop today on this snowy Sunday afternoon and I'm quilting on a customer quilt and just thought I would share a little bit about the quilt I'm working on. This baby quilt was one of those pre-stamped kits probably where you do the cross stitching on the marked lines and then it's got some dots on here which is where you're supposed to quilt. And I had a customer come in and want to get this finished, and we kind of discussed several ways of finishing it, and we're really not sure about how long these marks have been on here and what's happened to the quilt since she started working on it, and like has it been in the heat or how has it been stored. So we talked about several ways to quilt, and I think we just settled on trying to follow the marked lines, doing some cross hatching on them, but going ahead and quilting over the stitching. Now some people might say that you're not supposed to stitch over, or you're not supposed to quilt over these stitch lines, but I've done it many times and it works out beautifully and it really secures the whole quilt. If I were to have just followed the lines that were marked on here for quilting, there would be no quilting in the center, and that area is large enough that it really does need some type of quilting in there. So what I've done is I've looked at the marked lines and tried to figure out the most continuous quilting path to be able to quilt these lines, with one start and one stop, because that's always my goal. So what I've done is I've kind of used my finger to go back and forth and go, okay, if I go in the ditch here and back up and keep going, then I'm back on this side of the quilt. So I can easily do those lines when I'm stitching the ditch around. I've chose to put just a little heart here in the corner, and which is kind of following the line that's there. And then the lines that go across here, this crosshatch line touches it, then comes off. So I'm going to follow that line also. Now in the sashing and the border, I'm just going to put some kind of a floral design going through, just some flowers and leaves. And I'm going to do that at the end. So after I've got all the blocks done, which there's only 6 of them, when I get the blocks all done, then I will come back and do the sashing area. All right, I'm going to keep working on this, hopefully get done before all that snow comes down. If you can see that in the background, but we've got snow coming down, and hopefully it won't get too bad before I get this done, maybe another hour or so. I'll let you follow along and watch me as I finish quilting this. A couple issues with these stamped quilts is that these lines are supposed to come out, but we don't know 100% that they're going to, which is why I'm not choosing to quilt a totally different design. I would rather try to quilt on these marked lines and hope that they come out. But if they don't, then at least I'm not that far off. Although you will also notice that these lines are not perfectly straight. If we put a ruler up against those dot lines, they're kind of weave in and out. So I know that it's more important that this line be straight than for me to make sure that I'm quilting on that line. It's really not a line, it's just a row of dots. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to stay as close to them as possible, but I also want my crosshatch lines to be as equally spaced as possible and not one line kind of going diagonal and then the other one going straight, because all of that quilting will really be noticeable in the end, especially if all the lines do disappear like we hope that they do. You'll also notice that I have a few pins in the seam area, and that's because my seam is flipping back and forth, so I'm holding that in place until I get right up to it, and I will stitch in the ditch next to it and hopefully keep that seam from flipping back and forth. I'm also using a combination of rulers. I've got all 3 of my quilted pineapple straight rulers out, and you'll see me flipping back and forth between these 3 sizes. So this is the 5-inch, the 12-inch, and even the 16-inch. And that will help me get those long straight lines. I'm switching over to the longest ruler I've got because I'm going to try to reach from where the hopping foot is all the way up to the other end of the block. And I'm going to twist my ruler until I make sure that it's straight and lining up with the other end. I'm also looking at the dots on the fabric and where they line up here on the etched lines so that I can also help to keep that straight. So this is about 3 spaces in, so I'm going to make sure at the other end I'm also 3 spaces in. I've finished all the blocks, and now I'm working through the sashing. I'm just zigzagging through the different blocks to make it as continuous as possible. Then I'll jump out and go around the outer edge where the border is. And of course, I run out of bobbin thread right in the middle of that sashing. I should have checked my bobbin before I started.